everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session, Mission at Risk, How Tariffs Challenge Nonprofits' Budgets and Operations. My name is Christie, and I am a Customer Success Specialist with Tax 990 and IRS e-file provider for the 990 series forms. Please note, we are not tax advisors, and we will not be providing tax advice or discussing your specific filing requirements. The information we are providing today is intended for educational and general information purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional tax, legal, or accounting advice. And we strongly recommend consulting with a qualified tax professional or legal advisor to address your specific circumstances or questions. On the agenda for today, we're going to discuss what are tariffs, how they affect nonprofits, and how to combat tariffs. So what are tariffs? I'm sure you've heard in the news that tariffs are going to be increased, but what exactly is that? A tariff is a tax or duty imposed by a government on goods and services imported from other countries. It is usually calculated as a percentage of the total value of the item imported. Tariffs increase the cost of the imported goods, making them more expensive relative to domestic products. And tariffs are one of the oldest forms of government intervention in trade and remain a key tool in modern economic and trade policies. Tariffs, can they affect your nonprofit? Even though nonprofits are tax exempt, they are not immune to the economic ripple effects caused by tariffs. Here's how tariffs might impact your organization. So now that you know what tariffs are, what are the goals and purposes of a tariff? Firstly, they protect domestic industries. The objective is to shield the local manufacturers or farmers from foreign competition. So how does that work? By making imported goods more expensive, tariffs encourage consumers to buy domestically produced alternatives, meaning made in the USA for today's purposes. For example, a government may place a 25% tariff on imported steel to protect local steel producers from being undercut by cheaper foreign steel. It also retaliates against unfair trade practices. The objective is to respond to what a country perceives as an unfair trade practice, such as dumping or selling goods below market value, or subsidized that gives substances that give foreign companies an unfair advantage. So how does that work? The tariffs are used as a punitive measure to discourage these practices and pressure the offending country to change its behavior. Example, country A heavily subsidized its solar panel manufacturers, and country B might impose tariffs on those solar panels to level out the playing field. It influences international negotiations. The objective is to use tariffs as a leverage in trade negotiations to secure better terms or concessions for trading partners. How this is supposed to work is a country might threaten or impose tariffs during negotiations and then agree to lift them in exchange for favorable agreement. For example, opening markets or respecting intellectual property. For example, the US has used tariffs during trade negotiations with countries like China and Mexico to renegotiate trade deals or address trade imbalances. It helps generate government revenue. The objective is to raise funds for the government, particularly in countries that lack a broad-based tax system. And how it works is its import duties become a direct source of income. Note, there was more significant reason historically but today revenue is typically a secondary goal in developed countries. It also helps promote national security. The objective there is to promote industries considered vital to national security, such as defense and energy and food production. So how that works is the tariffs can reduce the dependencies on foreign sources for strategic goods. For example, imposing tariffs on imported telecommunication equipment to reduce the reliance on foreign technology providers. It also supports environmental and health ethical objectives. The objective here is to discourage imports that harm the environment or involve unethical practices. For instance, child labor or deforestation. And how that works is the tariff makes it such that the import's less competitive and encourages better practices. For example, the green tariffs on carbon incentive imports. So there are some effects and considerations to consider when on tariffs. The pros for tariffs could be to protect emerging and struggling industries. Tariffs acts as a shield for domestic industries that are just getting off the ground or under pressure for cheaper foreign competitors. By raising the cost of imported goods, tariffs give the local business a chance to A, develop their production capacity, B, gain market share, C, they can become competitive over time without immediately being overwhelmed. For example, if a local solar panel manufacturer faces steep competition from a low-cost foreign panels, a tariff on imported panels gives the domestic producer room to grow, which could in turn benefit nonprofits involved in environmental sustainability or workforce development in green energy sectors. It also, another pro could be it encourages local production and job creation. Tariffs make imported goods more expensive, which can incentivize competitive companies to produce locally. This leads to increased demand for domestic manufacturing, job creation in industries like textiles and steels, agriculture, and technology. Economic stimulation in regions where high unemployment or underdevelopment are. So for nonprofits, this could mean major job training or placement opportunities for their clients, easier access to grants, funding for partnerships with local businesses. It could also mean greater community economic stability, which can reduce the reliance on nonprofit services. It can also improve trade terms through negotiation. Tariffs can be used as a leveraging tool in trade negotiations with other countries. When used strategically, they can push foreign governments to reduce their own barriers, open up fairer access to international markets, encourage compliance with labor, environmental, or human rights standards. Why does this matter for nonprofits? The organization working internationally may benefit from improved trade terms that support fair labor or environmental goals. Domestic nonprofits can gain from a stronger economy or enhance accessibility to fairly priced and ethical sourced goods. So what are some of the cons? Increased prices for consumers. Tariffs raise the cost of imported goods, and those higher costs, unfortunately, are often passed directly to the consumer. This results in higher prices for everyday goods such as clothing, electronics, medical supplies, and even food. As we all know, you can't turn the television on without knowing about the cost of things right now. Inflationary pressures, especially on the low and middle income households. A greater burden on people who are already economically vulnerable. So this may impact nonprofits by nonprofits serving low-income populations may see greater demand on their aid, food, housing, utilities. The organization themselves may even face higher operational costs if they rely on imported materials such as tech or other supplies. So this may lead to trade wars or retaliation tariffs. When one country imposes tariffs, others may respond in kind, creating a cycle of retaliation. This can disrupt global supply chains, raise tension between allies or trade partners. It can lead to a reduction in overall global trade volume. So how does this impact nonprofit? Humanitarian or development organizations may face barriers shipping goods internationally. Retaliation tariffs may increase import-export costs, straining budgets and slowing down aid efforts. And trade uncertainty can reduce the corporate profit, which may lead to fewer donations or sponsorships. And this can also harm export industries by raising costs or provoking foreign restrictions. Tariffs not only make imports more expensive, they can indirectly harm domestic producers who rely on foreign markets or imported inputs. Other countries may impose tariffs on U.S. exports, hurting industries like agriculture and manufacturing and energy. U.S. companies may pay more for raw materials, reducing competitiveness abroad. And it can also lead to job losses in industries that depend on international sales. How can this impact nonprofits? Rural and agricultural nonprofits may see economic instabilities among farmers and need to increase support. Workforce development organizations may need to pivot sources if exported related jobs decline. And foundations with investments in affected sectors may see declines in endowment performance and reduced grant-making capacity. So how our tariffs could affect your nonprofits? We discussed a little bit of how those can have pros and con effects on there, but let's talk a little bit more. Higher operating cost. If your nonprofit buys goods that are imported, such as computers, medical supplies, promotional materials, tariffs can increase the cost of these goods. Computers and electronics are up 25% higher cost for laptops, projectors, and networking gear, according to the U.S. Trade Representative of 2019. Construction projects for affordable housing or community centers could be more expensive if the steel, aluminum, or other materials are affected by tariffs. Medical supplies like gloves, syringes, thermometers from China saw price hikes due to tariffs. Printing and promotional materials, such as paper or promotional products, often come from overseas. Example, a health nonprofit importing medical kits saw a 14% increase in procurement costs after tariffs were imposed on China's medical supplies. So this is also going to increase your program expenses. The programs that rely heavily on imported products, such as those medical aid, disaster relief, educational technology, may face budget strains. Food banks or aid organizations may see costs go up if imported food prices are raised. This is also going to affect supply chain disruptions. Delays or shortages in imported goods due to trade disputes can disrupt programming or service delays. Building or renovating a facility, tariffs on raw materials like steel and aluminum have seen 25 and 10% respectively increase in pricing. Habitat for Humanity reported in 2019 that tariffs added an extra $1,000 to $3,000 to the cost of each new home they built in the U.S. Nonprofits that deliver goods or services often rely on global supply chains, and tariffs can create higher food prices for food banks, hunger relief organizations, shipping delays for international aid organizations, and that according to the Feeding America, they experienced a 10% increase in food costs, which means tens of millions fewer meals distributed annually. Donor impact. Businesses hurt by tariffs might cut back on charitable givings. Corporate donors, companies facing higher input costs may reduce charitable giving. In 2019, over 20% of U.S. companies reported cutting budgets in response to trade policy uncertainty. Investment portfolios. If your nonprofit has endowments, could experience volatile due to global trade tensions. Investment returns. Tariff-related market volatility can shrink nonprofits' endowments or reserve funds. A drop in stock market returns as seen during trade tensions in 2018 to 2019 can impact both asset values and income. As of May 2025, the U.S. has implemented various tariffs, including a 10% baseline tariff on all imports, 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum, and a significant tariff on Chinese imports. The baseline tariff, a 10% tariff, is currently applied to all foreign imports effective as of April 5th, 2025. This baseline tariff affects a wide range of goods entering the U.S. Steel and aluminum tariffs were affected with a 25% tariff on automobiles, and certain auto parts was imposed on April 3rd of 2025. This part of ongoing efforts to bolster the U.S. automotive industry. Chinese imports. The U.S. maintains Section 301 tariffs on approximately $370 billion worth of Chinese imports, with rates ranging from 7.5% to 25%. These tariffs were initially imposed in 2019 in response to trade practices and have been adjusted in recent years. Recent developments in May 2025, the U.S. and China agreed to a 90-day suspension of certain tariffs, reducing Chinese tariffs on American products from 125% to 10% during this period. However, a baseline 10% tariff remains in effect. Negotiations and future tariffs. Ongoing negotiations with various countries may lead to changes in tariffs rates. For instance, President Trump has threatened a 50% tariff on imports from European unions starting June 1st of 2025 due to a stalled trade negotiation. The current tariff landscape is complex and subject to change based on ongoing trade negotiations and economic policies. Importers and exporters should stay very informed about these developments and navigate the evolving trade environments effectively. And since nonprofits are directly related to these areas, they should stay up to date as well. So what can you do? First of all, review your supply chain. Understand where your goods and services are coming from. Diversify your supply chain. Nonprofits can explore alternative suppliers to reduce reliance on imported goods. Remote work. Adapting remote and hybrid work models can reduce overhead costs. Advocacy. Nonprofits can advocate for policies that reduce the negative impact of tariffs on their operations and the communities that they serve. Also, budget for potential increases. Build flexibility into your budget to account for raising costs. Analyze historical data by reviewing the past budgets and actual expenditures to identify areas where costs consistently exceed projections. Focus on variable costs such as utilities, travel, supplies, which are more prone to fluctuation. Identify cost drivers and risk areas. So list the components of your budget that are susceptible to inflation, supply chain issues, or contract renegotiations. Common risk areas such as salaries and benefits, vendor contracts, insurance premiums, rents, utilities, and technology cost are one of the few areas that you can try to identify. Incorporate a contingency line item. Allocate 5 to 15% of your total budget or specific line items as a contingency reserve. The percentage can vary depending on the volatility of your cost structure and the level of uncertainty. Use a tiered budgeting or scenario planning. Create multiple budget scenarios. Best case, expected, worst case. This allows you to respond flexible, have a response with flexibility if the costs rise faster than anticipated. Always review contracts and agreements. Check your vendors or service agreements for escalation clauses. Negotiate fixed rate terms or caps where possible to control future increases. And always plan for incremental increases. For multi-year budgets, include annual percentage increases, such as a 2 to 3% increase for salaries and a 5% increase for insurance. This will ensure that you don't under budget for routine cost growth, and document assumptions. Clearly note that the assumptions behind each estimate. For example, rent will increase by 4% annually. This transparency aids in reviews and updates and strengthens your budget's credibility. Monitor and update regularly. We've discussed about monitoring and updating our plans for natural disasters, onboarding, also about fraud, even budgeting for tariffs, and monitoring and updating regularly is important. Conduct quarterly or biannual reviews to compare actuals against the budget, and then adjust projections and reallocations as needed to maintain that financial control. Diversify vendors. What does diversified vendors mean? Seek domestic or alternative suppliers to reduce risk. So how do you do that? We're going to access current vendor landscape. Create a vendor map. List all of your current vendors, their location, contract terms, and the percentage of that's spent that they represent. Then you can identify the critical dependency. Highlight any single source supplier or vendor located in a risk-prone region. For example, international shipping delays or geopolitical instabilities. Define diversification criteria. So let your board know what you're doing. Decide what diversification means for your organization. Geographic spread, domestic versus international. Different regions within a country. That's going to give you vendor type, large versus small suppliers, different ownership models. For example, minority owned or locally owned. Service overlaps. At least 2 vendors for each critical function or product, meaning don't rely just on one, so that if one vendor increases their pricing, you have another vendor that you can switch to who didn't increase their pricing. Research and qualify alternatives. Seek domestic or nearshore vendors to reduce shipping time and tariff risk. Use online suppliers directories, industry networks, and procurement platforms like ThomasNet or Source Intelligence. And evaluate alternatives using criteria such as pricing, capacity, reliability, or ethical sourcing. Always negotiate flexible terms. And so how do you do this? You're going to avoid long-term exclusivity clauses, meaning I'm not going to sign a 2-year agreement with you because in 2026, tariffs could increase. Include several service level agreements with penalties for delays, meaning that if your shipper is stuck at the border, you've got in plan some type of insurance saying that if they have to pay you for that delay. Request price locks or caps if possible, especially in inflationary environments. Also, continuously monitor and reassess. Just like with all the other products that webinars we've discussed, from fraud, your contingency plans, always reevaluate. So how you're going to reevaluate? You're going to set up quarterly reviews to assess vendors' performance and market changes. This is important because you don't want to become stagnant. You don't want it to slide under the rug and you are paying more than you should just because you need to renegotiate. Maintain a vendor scorecard to track delivery times, pricing trends, and customer service. And above all, stay informed. Track trade policies that could impact your sector. How do you stay informed on tariff, trade, and policies? Monitor official government sources such as the U.S. International Trade Commission. You can reach out on that website at www.usitc.gov. Review the U.S. Custom and Border Protection. They publish and import-export rules and regulations. You can access that at www.cbp.gov. Office of U.S. Trade Representatives, that is a key source for trade agreements and disputes. It's ustr.gov. Subscribe to trade and industry newsletters, such as Global Trade Magazines, the Trade Compliance blog, Bloomberg Trade Markets. Newsletters doesn't cost to subscribe, and it keeps you very well informed. Many industry associations also offer updates specific to your sector, for example, manufacturing or technology. Use tariff monitoring tools such as an HS code lookup tool, for example, Import Genius. Also use a tariff tracker platforms like Market Access Map. This can be accessed at macmap.org or the WTO tariff analysis online, tao.two.org. Also join industry or trade associations. Associations often provide alerts, briefings, and export analysis on relevant policy changes. For example, the National Association of Manufacturing, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, or sector-specific trade councils. Also consult with trade attorneys or custom brokers. These professionals monitor tariffs closely and can provide updates tailored to your supply chain. Consider retaining an expert if tariffs have a major impact on your organization. You could also attend trade webinars and conferences. Government agencies and industries groups regularly host events covering tariff changes, trade agreements, global trade outlooks, and most are free to the public. Set Google alerts and follow trade analysis. Use keywords like tariffs in your industry, or Section 301 tariffs, or the USTR updates. And follow trade analysis on platforms like LinkedIn and X for timely insights. So while tariffs may seem like a distant policy tool used in international trade negotiation, their effect ripples through every layer of the economy, including the nonprofit sectors, from raising costs on essential goods and services to supply chain disruptions and reduces donors' capacity. The impact can be significant, even for tax-exempt organizations. Nonprofits must be proactive, not reactive. By understanding how tariffs work, monitoring policy changes, diversifying suppliers, and building flexibility into budgets, organizations can better shield their mission from economic turbulence. The key is preparation. Assess risk, engage in strategic planning, and advocate for policies that support your organizations and the communities you serve. In an increasingly interconnected global economy, even local missions can be influenced by global trade. Staying informed and adaptable isn't just smart, it's essential for long-term stability. So now we're going to open up the floor for a few questions. Please remember that if we don't get to your questions today, we will email you. If you do have any questions later after the webinar that you think of, you can email us at support@tax990.com. And don't worry, this webinar is being recorded, and we will email you a copy of the webinar at a later date. Okay, let me just take a look at the questions that are coming in. So it says, there is a question about the date a tax 990 is, your form 990 is due. That is based on how your determination letter is. Even though today's webinar is not about information on the 990 form itself, I'll go ahead and give you that quick answer. You can go to our website, www.tax990.com, and under our support, there is a due date finder. So the due date for fiscal years is the 15th day of the 5th month after your tax period ends. So meaning if yours is July, it's going to be July, August, September, October, November, December 15th. Okay. So Hannah also has a question about how can we identify which items or services in our budget are most affected by tariffs? Wow, Hannah, that's a really good question. So as we stated, I would start by reviewing your budget and your vendor expenses line by line to identify the goods and services that are either affected by imported directly from foreign country, especially China, manufactured using imported components or raw materials. Those are going to be the biggest tariff items. Okay. So how can you dig a little deeper? Review your vendor invoices and contracts. We talked a bit about that. Check whether your supplier sources produces internationally. Look for language like subject to tariff adjustment or imported fees. Be on the lookout for those hidden terminologies, okay? Focus on commonly affected categories such as technology, medical supplies, especially stuff like PPE, gloves, testing equipment, educational materials, office operation such as furniture, lighting, appliances, and food services with imported produce, especially during off seasons that affect fruits and vegetables that aren't locally grown. You could also consult a harmonized tariff schedule, an HTZ, which is used to classify every imported product. Talk to your suppliers. Ask your vendors, are any of the items we purchase impacted by current tariffs? Don't hesitate to have those hard talks. If there are affected, you're going to have a talk with them. Ask, your board if it's good to go with domestic alternatives. Most boards are going to say yes. And can you provide an itemized tariff related fees on quotes and services? Go ahead and be upfront with your vendors. I need to know, are these imported? What are the fees associated with the tariffs? And then, you know, again, like I said, compare your year-over-year cost. Those are going to be the most effective. Let's see, what else? Okay, there's one more question. It looks like Tammy asked, what tariff-related trends should nonprofits monitor going into 2026 and beyond? Wow, somebody did their homework. You really, so as tariffs increasingly affect nonprofit budgets and operations, supply chains, staying ahead of this trend is critical. Here's some key developments on nonprofits and how they should track through 2026 and beyond. So you should watch for shifting U.S. trade policies by the administration. We all know that Trump has some very steep tariff ideas, so staying abreast of those is going to be key. Renewed focus on domestic manufacturing and buying, quote, American policies. I would pay special attention to those. Nonprofits that purchase computers, vehicles with federal funds could be affected by the American compliance rule, which is tied directly to the tariffs and subsidy strategies. Expect more rules requiring procedures from the US-based suppliers, particularly in health and education and the green energy sectors. The Big Beautiful Bill has already affected some of the green technologies or strategy tariffs. I'm planning a webinar on the Big Beautiful Bill, and that will be focused posted at a later date. New tariffs on green technologies such as electric vehicles and solar panels and batteries, pharmaceuticals and medical devices. These could raise prices for nonprofits. So the tip is to track the development through the U.S. International Trade Commission. So I would Google that and get on their website and stay abreast of those. Okay, it looks like I don't have any more questions coming in. So Tax 990 has put a lot of work into providing you with the best resources possible. We also have our knowledge base to give you quick answers to common questions related to your 990 filing process, along with form information and filing requirements. You can check out our YouTube channel, our blogs for helpful step-by-step guides. And if you're filing your 990 form series or want to learn more, don't hesitate to visit our website and reach out to us. Our contact is by phone, 704-839-2321. And if you'd rather email us, you can email us at support@tax990.com. We are here Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We also offer email support, as I said, and live chat on our website. Again, I'd like to thank you for joining me today. And if you guys have any ideas on webinars that you want to have a focus on, give me some feedback on that by sending me an email to support@tax990.com, and we'll look into some more webinar topics. As we move into the November deadline, we will be becoming more focused on the form and compliance. So don't worry, those will be coming. Again, thank you, and I hope everyone has a great day and stay safe.